Right, what is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking a bit of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth with the Greek myth, the man, the legend, Mo Gallagher. How are you, Mo?
I'm very well, thank you so much for having me on.
Did you like me little segue there into
I do appreciate it. That was, do you know what? I was thinking about this earlier that we've got a Scouse and a Glaswegian on a podcast. This is a one-way ticket to subtitles, I think.
Do you know what was dead funny? I've been planning the intro in my head all obviously week. And that was one of the things we're going to say. People listening from America are going to hear our accents. We're going to understand each other. But as you say, YouTube have got subtitles for a reason. So
yeah,
switch them on. So yeah, we're going to talk a bit about basically what's happened. We may be a little bit late to the party in the sense of, but obviously, you know, we could have, it was a week ago, for instance, we got the new trailer at least, you know, we've had the TGS info, we've seen a few of the demos, but it's just, I suppose, pinning down a date for us both to talk about it. We're going to give our thoughts. I'm going to probably maybe fangirl a little bit more than Mo. Mo's probably going to be the articulate one in this conversation.
The level-headed one, yeah.
Yeah, so we're just we're going to go for it. We're no particular order. We're just gonna we've got a few things written down, and we're just going to go for it. To be honest with you, so as I say, a lot of information that we've received, and one of the main talking points that I kind of want to start with, Mo, is particularly with Zack. I was honest with you before, the whole timeline situation from obviously, you know, previous trailers, previous games. What's going on here? I must admit, I'm in the boat of I can't really understand what's going on with multiverse theories. So, you know, so all these theories and all these timelines, I get a bit confused. So I'm going to lean on you and hope that you can provide me with some information of how that maybe will be panning out and how you think, you know, the Zack storyline's going to, as I say, pan out in Rebirth.
Sure. Well, first of all, if I do start to waffle, apologies for that. This is something that I've had a real keen interest in for basically since I got to the end of Remake. So just to sort of provide a bit of a broad overview. Obviously, in the original game, we learned that Zack passed away while carrying Cloud to Midgar, and from that point on, Cloud continued the journey into the city. Crisis Core goes in a lot more in depth to sort of provide more of the context to that. And Crisis Core Reunion has more recently sort of brought that back into the limelight for fans. So the context going into Remake is that both the original game and Crisis Core set up that Zack dies. The point of the story is that in order for Cloud to become the soldier, Zack has to die. Okay, so we get to the end of Remake, and we know that over the course of Remake, Aerith has indicated that she knows things that she shouldn't know. It's later been confirmed in the Ultimanias that the way it's described by co-director Motomu Toriyama is that Aerith has memories of the future. Okay, so the easiest way to think about this is if you think about Remake or Aerith in Remake is having memories of future events that took place in the old game. So the old game, is its own continuity. It's completed. It's got beginning, middle, and end. Remake itself is retelling that story, but effectively in an alternate timeline, for want of a better explanation or terminology, but we'll kind of come back to that. So at the end of Remake, the party is invited to enter the Singularity. Now, the Singularity is described as a realm that is beyond time and space, where the whispers that operate within there have links to all time and space effectively across the multiverse.
Yeah.
So when the party enters the Singularity, whatever they do within the Singularity will affect the time or the space outside of the Singularity. So when they exit again, we know that something has changed, and we know that the big thing that has changed is that Zack has survived.
Mm-hmm. It's like a butterfly effect, so to speak.
It is. So by defeating the Whispers, by defeating Fate in the Singularity, and by releasing Sephiroth, they have effectively changed points in time. They have they have changed events in time. As you say, the butterfly effect has kicked in. So one of the big things that was shown to us at the end of Remake was that the stamp on the crisp bag or chip bag, if you're listening from across the pond, had changed. So it gave us an indication that this was, we're now dealing with a different continuity. The big question that has been hanging over everyone since the end of Remake is, first of all, or the first theory is, are there more than one timeline? I.e., what has been known as the stamp timeline. So for the duration of Remake, the player has been playing the continuity of Final Fantasy VII Remake with stamp as a beagle. They enter the Singularity, events change within the Singularity, they exit the Singularity. Have they stepped back into the beagle timeline and on a different continuity where the Terrier stamp is in play? Is that now running in parallel to the beagle timeline? Alternatively, the competing theory was that at the end of Remake, the party has entered the Singularity. Events have now been changed, and when they exit the Singularity, the original timeline, the original continuity no longer exists. So they've stepped out into a different reality, effectively. So these are the two main competing theories. Are there two timelines, or is there one timeline? So is Beagle stamp and Terrier stamp timelines running simultaneously, or is it only Terrier stamp?
Is there only one now?
So there's a third kind of main theory, which is that the so-called Terrier timeline is actually, like, all of this is occurring within the live stream, because the live stream itself is just the memories of everyone who has ever lived or everyone who will ever live. So time is not measured, you know, the way that we understand time. Time is measured by memory. So the third theory is that everything, because Zack dies at the end of Crisis Core, what we are now seeing is Zack within the live stream. Zack sort of projecting himself. I've never personally felt that was the answer. I've always been confident that we would have two timelines, but we would never know the answer to that question until Rebirth comes up and we see whether or not Cloud and the party are in the Beagle timeline or if they're in the Terrier timeline. So one of the things that has now been confirmed through the State of Play trailer, although it was kind of hidden, but you know, the internet finds these things within seconds. But more specifically within the demos, is that it's confirmed that Cloud and the party are still operating within the Beagle timeline.
Yeah.
Which implies, in the way that it has been described through the creators, they are calling these the worlds. So effectively Cloud's world and Zack's world, which is the same way that we would call Cloud's world as the stamp, or the Beagle timeline. Zack's world is the Terrier timeline. So we're now in a situation where we have two stories running simultaneous to one another. And it's very likely that the rift in the sky is these worlds are starting to collide. They're starting to merge.
Right. So with all that information, then fast forward to, obviously, well, not fast forward now, rewind to the trailer we had last week, where at the beginning of it, we've seen Zack carrying Cloud in. Is that the same theory? We think that's just Zack's point of view, thinking everything's fine. He's doing his best to obviously save his friend. We see, obviously, him go into, obviously, Midgar with him and leave it. So it's still the same theory that they're still separate timelines in the sense of that.
Exactly.
You know, yeah.
So what's happened in the stamp, the Beagle timeline, is that things have played out kind of the same way that they did in the original game. Zack died outside Midgar. Cloud picked up the Buster Sword, made his way into Midgar, through the Genova cells in his body. He's got a little bit of his own personality. He's got quite a bit of...
One sec, mate. It dropped out massively for me. It's still recording.
Okay.
Just go from it's fine now. Go from me asking about dropping him off. Zack dropping Cloud off. Are we on the under pressure? And that's the same theory. Just start that bit again, and okay. I'll edit it out.
Sure. So yeah, we are sticking with the same theory. So basically, the Beagle timeline operates as if we are similar to the original game. Zack dies outside Midgar. Cloud picks up the Buster Sword. He makes his way to Midgar. And a concoction of Zack's memories, Tifa's memories, and Cloud's own personality then sort of brings to life this new persona for Cloud. Okay, so that's the Beagle timeline. Because the events in the singularity affect all points in space and time, what's happened is that at the point in the Terrier timeline where Zack was supposed to die, he has not died. So he now has continued into Midgar with Cloud. So the events that you're seeing with Zack and Cloud in Midgar are actually a few months prior, or maybe a few weeks prior to the events of Remake.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different continuity, a different timeline, and it's slightly earlier than what would have been taking place in Remake. Just because when Zack actually dies, it's about a month before the start of Remake.
Okay. I'm getting there. I'm feeling a bit more confidence in that, I must admit. There is obviously, we're hoping it all comes to a head. It is a lot clearer once the game's released. But yeah, there was just a few issues with that I've played the game for religiously for decades, and it was still confusing to me. We'll actually probably clear that up a bit.
the simplest way to think about it is that in the timeline where Cloud is the leader of the party, Zack has died.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing things play out if Zack had died. In the parallel timeline where Zack is alive, we're now about to see the butterfly effects of that. What happens if Cloud never became the hero? What happens if Zack went on? How does that affect Avalanche? How does that affect Aerith? How does that affect Sephiroth? So on and so forth. So the first timeline is playing out close to what we remember from the original game. The second timeline is effectively a new narrative of a what-if situation.
Okay, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I am understanding it. Made up. Right, moving on, I wanted to touch, obviously, on the world map in general, what we've seen so far with the two demos and obviously the TGS show. The world map itself, one thing I'd done a podcast a few years ago, in fact, many years ago before even Remake came out, when it was announced that it was going to be made.
Mm-hmm.
And in the collective, it was when the world map is introduced as a whole, it's got to be off the scale. It's got to be a lot more dense than the original. As we know, the original was very bare bones, wasn't fleshed out in every aspect.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the world map in general for me needed to be more than what we were used to, and it didn't disappoint. There's a lot we're going to talk about the world map in general, and probably segue into other things. But yeah, first impressions I got of it was when we seen the world map for the first time. It wasn't just you see where everything was. It was all hidden. You had to discuss. The further you walked, the more exploration you made, and you got to see how vast and that side of it in general. Just the world map, really, I was really impressed with it.
Yeah. Do you know what I thought was really cool as well? Like, I'm fresh off the back of Final Fantasy 16. I really liked the open zone idea they had. But there were points where it kind of felt a little bit overwhelming because it was new, just because it was so big. It took a bit of time to explore. And looking at what they've done with the world map here, I can anticipate that there's going to be the same overwhelming feeling to begin with. But kind of looking back at what it was like originally. Do you remember that feeling of leaving Midgar for the first time and just being like, wow.
Wow. I thought the game was going to end when we
Yeah.
left Midgar, and then all of a sudden it was just starting.
So yeah, exactly. So it's just it kind of take your breath away stuff. And I think what they've done here is maybe reintroduce that factor of when you kind of leave Kalm and you see this grassland or all these grasslands, but it's so vast. But obviously, as you run, it starts to the color of the map changes. So as overwhelming as it is, you can actually see where you've been. So there's incentive to go and check out different spaces and maybe direct you to where you want to go. And I really like that, and particularly, there are so many things. As much as a lot of it's so new, it's also so familiar. And I like that they've managed to capture that blend of like so much nostalgia, but proper wow factor. Like this is so much better than I could ever have imagined myself. So it looks amazing.
It's like Civilization, obviously before humans got there, and then now all of a sudden, it's, as you say, it's just just windmills in the distance. One thing I'm really excited about, to be honest with you, and we'll touch a bit more on it in a bit, is the new POIs that we're seeing. One of the ones, obviously, as I say, when we get onto the subject, was the more Chocobo ranches and things.
Yeah.
Just little things like that. So yeah, I've obviously got a few things I want to talk about in sense of the whale map in general. But we all know from Midgar to Chocobo to Junon, all that white space that we've got to explore is going to be totally explored before we even move on. Exactly. I think everyone's going to be doing that.
Exactly, and I love that as well. That it does as much as Hamaguchi has been talking about. It's seamless environments. You can come and go. I love that idea, but I also like that it does seem to be segmented the way that it was in the original game. That you leave Midgar and you can go to Kalm, or you can go to the Chocobo farm, or you can go and mess about in the marshes. But in order for you to actually progress the story, you still have to go through the Mithril mines.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be the same idea here. That as much as there's so much open space to explore, you can't go to Junon without doing the marshes section. You can't get to across the sea without doing the Junon parade, and so it will be actually broken up into chunks, which I think it makes the whole thing a lot less overwhelming. But for me, like, I'm a total lore junkie. I love going in and exploring all the new bits and pieces of the sort of in-game mythos. So kind of running about and seeing the ruins of like old towns or old villages, or like they've got, as you mentioned, there's more than one ranch, so you can go and visit farms, or you can go and visit like observation platforms that look out onto the sea, and things that weren't actually present in the original game. And I'm just give me this right now. I want to go and explore it right now.
Same. I know. I can't wait. That's a nice little segue. To be fair, it kind of keeps us on the exploration side of things. Is we see Chadley when we get obviously into the Chocobo farm. We see him.
Yeah, the ranch.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. We see him at the ranch, and the signs of it, I suppose, like a bit of a side quest, so to speak, or like a bit of a mini game where he talks about the communication tower being down, and it's a bit of a tutorial about we go with him, we switch it on, and it opens up that whole area. I don't think it opens up like in the sense of the white. I don't think that where you haven't explored, but it shows you all the POIs, doesn't it? It gives us that.
Exactly. So it looks as if even in that grasslands area, there's actually quite a few towers. Yeah. So like if you work your way further north than where the ranch is, there might be another tower. There's a tower in Kalm as well. So exactly as you said, that you might be able to explore and find all these wee things yourself, but actually being able to go to the tower, it will point out everything that you need to go. And I think it's such a cool way of doing it. And I really like the idea that they've sort of played into the story that it's like old communications towers for the Republic of Junon that Shinra displaced, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of Final Fantasy VIII, at the start, where the Galbadian Empire is kind of trying to set up the communications satellite tower. So it's kind of giving me vibes of that. which I kind of really like. And I love this idea that it's just going to start feeding more and more information to us as players, but like in the story, it gives more and more information to Chadley as well. So you'll start to be able to unlock things through Chadley, which I'm really excited about as well. Because obviously in Remake, this is you went to start Chadley to get your summons. You could get new materia from him. You get new sort of quests or tasks to complete. So yeah, I'm pretty eager to see what they've come up with this time.
Yeah, Chadley has definitely got more influence in this game. As you say, he holds the key to some of the summons in the remake. He seems to be gathering all this information with the help of the team. I was saying to you off air, so to speak, that I've just got a weird feeling he's going to be a bit of a pain in our arse, whether he throws the spanner in the works and becomes a bit evil or something. There's definitely more to him anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you can't really be a cyborg that was put together in Hodro's lab and not have that twisted side. So, you know what? It wouldn't surprise me at all if, at the end of Rebirth or at some point in part 3, that it turns out that Chadley has been gathering this information to use against you.
Yeah.
Or it could be that Sephiroth's controlling him the whole time. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah. Good. That's not a bad idea. Maybe that is what his end game is, or he could just be a lovable guy that's following us around.
Exactly, and we're just badmouthing this wee boy cyborg.
Oh, right. Moving on, we touched on it briefly with the Chocobos in general. I feel like there's a lot in this segment for me, personally. Anyway, that we could talk about. We've seen again. I don't really want to keep on referring to it, but it was another area that in the previous podcast that I've done that I thought he could expand a lot on. Obviously, in the original, we had catching them in general. Using greens to catch them, so to speak, hoping you get an excellent one, racing them to make power. And the whole breeding process was, it was quite in depth for a game back in that day, to be honest with you. Yeah. And, roll on 2024, I wanted that to be a segment that was obviously going to be fleshed out to where we can spend. I want to complete the game, and I want to log on to Final Fantasy Rebirth and just get lost in Chocobo farm, Chocobo breeding. That was one of the areas I wanted to touch on, because there's a lot we're going to talk about. Firstly, the way we catch them this time around, by the way, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I'm going to be a big fan of this situation, and we're only seeing us catch a normal yellow Chocobo, whether we see green ones, blue ones in the wild in special high-level areas. We just don't know how it's going to pan out, and I say the food for thought that you've gave us is interesting.
Yeah, I really like the idea that same with what they did with Remake, that they take existing ideas from the original game and just sort of twist them a little bit. Like you had to run down the hill to find the Chocobo Pico to capture him, but you had to follow the tracks to get there. Like that, now that we've seen it, it seems obvious, but it's such a beautiful touch for returning fans. One of my favorite things was, seeing Cloud crouched and sort of shuffling around in the floor. It was like Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater, just I was getting total vibes of Cloud just sort of changing clothes to camouflage in with the flowers. But I'm in awe with the amount of information, and I'm totally with you that we saw the most basic sort of Chocobo wrangling game, but when it comes to mountain Chocobos, are we going to have to find different ways of doing that? The Chocobos that are capable of flight, is that something else we're going to have to learn? There's just when I watched the State of Play trailer as well, and we knew that there was going to be Chocobos in the game. We knew that we were going to be able to ride them, but as soon as you saw the black Chocobo climbing up the cliffside, as soon as you saw the blue Chocobo in the air, it was just like, oh my god, this game is so far beyond what any of us were anticipating.
Yeah.
And that's just scratching the surface of what they're about to give us. So yeah, I'm blown away by it already.
Same. And staying with, obviously, as I say, there's a lot to talk about with the Chocobos in general. And we talked about it, we touched on it before. We've seen Gabe's Ranch in the Junon area. And we've seen, obviously, the NPC where when we've seen, obviously, the inventory was armor and things like that for your Chocobo. So, and obviously, we see it as well at the beginning where the black Chocobo comes out with like the red armor and stuff on. So, is that going to be another thing? Is it going to be like a Knights of the Round armor set, so to speak, for the Chocobo that's going to make that particular gold Chocobo this ultimate? It's your own super boss that you can ride on. It's going to. It's as I say, there's just so much going on with what they've done with this.
Exactly.
I'm so excited for.
I think with the kind of last couple of years when they've brought out mobile games like The First Soldier and Ever Crisis, a big appeal for that was being able to sort of mod your character. Have the clothes, the weapons, the armor, etc. And if realistically, I think in Rebirth, as much as we saw Cloud in Costa del Sol with a different outfit on, I don't think there'll be too much in the way of outfit changes for the characters. But I think what we will see is quite a bit of customizations with the Chocobos. So the Junon demo, you could already see that as soon as the party arrives in Junon, like the black Chocobo's there waiting for them, and it's already kitted out with, the I think it's the scorpion armor it's wearing.
Yeah.
So there's this idea that you can customize your Chocobo, but in the original game, when we were doing the Chocobo breeding, a big part of that was so that we could take them to the Gold Saucer and race them. So I wonder if rather than using the greens or the nuts to boost their stats, maybe the way to change stats is actually getting items from the ranches or armor. Maybe the scorpion armor or the soldier armor or whatever has different speed or stamina or whatever stats attributed to them that will then affect your performance at the Gold Saucer. So there's so much they can do with that.
One thing has just kind of come to my mind while you've been speaking as well. In the information we've recently received, we've seen obviously when you're on, when you're riding the Chocobo, they can sniff out hidden treasure, a bit similar to the way in Final Fantasy IX, where you have the chests spread out all over the map. Maybe there's going to be something like that implemented, where you're going to need a Chocobo that can climb a mountain, go on an ocean, and maybe sniff out a treasure chest on a massive whale map that may hold those rarer gears with all the stats for the races. That might be something they could implement.
It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense to do it that way, and I think they have, or they can have a lot of fun with this. And already we've seen the climbing the mountain, the gliding through the air. We've seen them swimming across surfaces. Who's to say that in part 3 when the underwater area becomes available through the submarine, that we might start to see situations where you can do the same thing but underwater, and it opens up all sorts of interesting.
I can see a black Chocobo with a scuba diving gear on already, with Red 13 on it with a big scuba mask on. No, do you know what? The last thing I want to mention about the Chocobos as well is this was obviously from the recent trailer, was the Chocobo racing in general. Again, previously I wanted the Chocobo racing in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, or the whole series this time around, to be like an in-game Mario Kart, where there's so many different levels, there's so many different maps. I want, again, like obviously breeding, I want to be able to log on once I've completed the game and just get lost in all the mini games, to be fair, in the Gold Saucer. Basically like us going to an arcade and playing for hours and hours and hours. I really wanted Chocobo racing to be fleshed out, and it looks from the first snippets that we've got that we might be getting that.
Well, do you know what? I was watching your reaction to the State of Play trailer last week, and one of the ideas that you kind of mentioned during that was this idea of sort of releasing updates over the course of time, and I think that'd be an amazing thing to do with Chocobo racing. The way, like Mario Kart Deluxe has, if you have a seasonal pass, you you get extra tracks every so often.
Oh, microtransactions, we're touching on that.
Well, yeah, that's maybe one way to do it. They can introduce microtransactions. They could maybe just do updates every time they want to try and entice players back into the game.
Like an online service, like an online service game.
Exactly. So they've obviously got Ever Crisis, which is running. So there's plenty of opportunity for cross promotion there. One of the things about the Chocobo racing is I think that it's a fantastic opportunity to, Final Fantasy VII is, obviously across the series, there's quite a lot of games that reference its predecessors. So, Final Fantasy XIV is obviously built on this idea of, we're going to pay homage to all the other games, and there's quite a lot of reference to older games in 16. But Final Fantasy VII, the original, isn't loaded with that kind of stuff, but maybe the Chocobo racing is a good opportunity where some of the tracks are references to older games, kind of thing. I think that would be really cool. But I love the idea that you had that the Gold Saucer in particular would be a really good way of additional content every now and again, just whenever they wanted to do cross promotions. I think that's an amazing idea.
Well, one thing I was like, it's very far fetched, but it wouldn't be impossible to do. Is imagine going into the Gold Saucer and there being like an arcade machine. You click it and you can play Final Fantasy 1 just in this entirety. Just something like that where you could just, you know what I mean, just get lost on, and then you completely forget you're playing Final Fantasy Rebirth, and when you save it and click out, you realize you're in the Gold Saucer playing. Just something like that would be absolutely mental if it happened.
I would. You're right. And why limit it to the original game? Why not? Just have various other games, or
or a new RPG, just a new little mini RPG of some sort.
Why not? One of the things that I'm really hoping for actually is that I really liked the Fort Condor game in Intermission. So from what we've seen so far of Rebirth, they haven't shown Fort Condor again, but they've obviously built the system for it. So it might actually be the case that the Gold Saucer is where you get to play Fort Condor if you want to play it. There'll be an area set up for it, or throughout the as you explore the world, the way that you do with an episode intermission, that you can pick up the little figures for it. So it wouldn't make any sense to have the Gold Saucer in all the mini games that come with the Gold Saucer, but not reintroduce Fort Condor. So I'm really hoping that they have it back again.
I hope for the Fort Condor minigame is exactly like it is in Intermission, and something else we're going to talk about. In fact, there might be a nice little segue after we finish with this segment, is the card game in Final Fantasy VIII, where it's just on the fly. You could go into any town, you can approach. When you talk to a certain NPC, it may pop up saying minigame, Fort Condor game, and play them. I hope it's that open. I hope it's not limited to say the Gold Saucer or Fort Condor. I hope it's like the card game in FF7, where it's just open world. And to get the better boards, you could go into, it could even be linked to the Chocobo breeding, finding certain items on certain continents that you can't get to without a certain Chocobo. I just hope it's that integrated. And as I say, Fort Condor, for me, the mini game was brilliant, and I hope they keep it that vast where you can just play it whenever you want.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, so talking about the card game, Queen's Blood, that's been introduced. We haven't seen much of it, just a few screenshots. Again, I'm hoping it's similar to the card game of Final Fantasy VIII, where we can just play it on the fly rather than it be limited into one place. But from what we've seen obviously a few characters, but rather than numbers like in Final Fantasy VIII, it seems like little Tetris symbols and the different colors. What do you make of it? What do you think? How do you think that's going to work?
First of all, I actually think it's going to work like Fort Condor in the way that only certain NPCs will play it, because I think the way it was shown was Cloud standing over this lady in Kalm, but she had the board set out in front of her, so it must be, or at least I would anticipate that rather than just offering to play anyone, that you would have to approach the individuals within or that are sitting down and have this board in front of them. As for how the game plays, I must admit that I haven't spent a lot of time kind of looking at the details of it. I know that friend Zuvazad of the Cosmo Canyon Observatory has actually already provided a breakdown of how he thinks it's going to play. And Viz, his level of analysis is off the charts. And if anyone is going to be able to work it out in advance, it's him. So I'm keen to learn a bit more because I absolutely adored Triple Triad. I'm not massively familiar with any of the other card game types from across the series. So I'm hoping that it's similar-ish to Triple Triad, because it opens up a whole different dimension to how you want to play the game. And it looks cool as well. You know, it's one of the best things about Final Fantasy 8, and I was a massive 8 fan, but one of the best things about it was actually going around collecting cards.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just for a completionist side of things, or just to be able to obtain some awesome artwork. That it's such an amazing addition. So I'm really looking forward to delving into that a little bit more. And in particular, Hamaguchi is already spoken about. There's not only is it a game, but as you progress through the story, it actually has its own side quest and its own kind of narrative, which I'm really excited about. I want to know more about that. I want to know where this sort of side story is coming in terms of Queen's Blood. So yeah, that's the whole thing. Just it's blown me away how much detail is going into this.
All these mini games that we're seeing, we are obviously I assume they're going to be as in depth as we're saying. But if they're going to give us the opportunity to so one thing with remake, obviously once you'd completed it on hard, we were kind of just sitting there waiting. Once we completed intermission, we were sitting there waiting. With this one, because obviously it's 2 discs, I assume we're going to be waiting another 3-4 years for the final installment. I still want to be playing Rebirth with all these mini games and all this exploration right up near enough until the release of the next one. Yeah. I don't want not to play it. So I think we're going to get it, and I'm really excited about it.
I think so. Yeah, I think you're right that there will be so much that you'll be able to return to, particularly if they do give the occasional update to it. But I think some of the feedback that came from Remake was that it didn't offer for people like myself that wanted to delve in and look at every nook and cranny to see what they could find from a lore perspective. We did really get our money's worth out of it. But for a lot of people, it was 1 or 2 playthroughs, and then you didn't really have to go back to it. So I think they've kind of learned their lesson here, that in order to get replayability, they will have to introduce this. But Remake itself is obviously quite a linear game, whereas this one is designed to be far less so. So I think that lends itself very well, it's almost as if now that we're looking at what they're doing with Rebirth, it's as if Remake was a kind of testing ground in a way. They wanted to see how far they could push the performance of the PS4. They wanted to see how the narrative worked, how they could get all this information into a kind of relatively linear story, a relatively linear game that's contained within Midgar. And now, okay, we've got all these bases covered. Let's just go mental and just open the whole thing up with Rebirth. And yeah, I think it's going to work, and I think it's going to work in a really, really big way.
Brilliant. So yeah, another thing that we've seen is the first look at a few of the major cities. We've obviously seen Kalm. We've obviously seen the Chocobo farm. We've seen Junon under Junon. And yeah, we've kind of got our first look at the size of what they're going to be like and how dense they're going to be, things going on in there. And yeah, first stop, Kalm. It looks pretty impressive.
Yeah, really, really. The watching the TGS footage, even within the half an hour space, they crammed so much in. I thought it was just going to be grasslands. I thought they would show us the Chocobo Ranch, and it just seeing it and being able to speak to Billy and Chloe. It it just warmed my heart being able to see these kids again, and you know, it's exactly how I pictured it in my head. But then, obviously, right at the end of the display, they opened up fast travel to Kalm, and that was just breathtaking, like absolutely breathtaking. And it's, you know, even walking about the town square, it was beautiful, and we got to see things like the inn, where obviously the Nibelheim flashback takes place. But every time I look at it, or every time somebody posts a photo, there's something new. Like again, Vesuvizad from the Cosmo Canyon Observatory pointed out, like, there's a cactuar just hiding amongst people's feet. Or, you know, one of the kids is actually holding a football or a soccer ball, which
Football,
Red 13
football,
exactly. I know. Sorry, that's the soccer's a bad word. And you know, Red 13 is just staring at the ball, which is a callback to the original game at Costa del Sol, where the kid's just kicking the ball off. But one of my favorite things is, you know, just Remake was jam-packed with references to the compilation. And one of the really fun things that I liked about the Kalm is that, you know, off in the corner there was just, you know, a group of girls just dancing, but it was kind of reminiscent of the festival at the start of Dirge of Cerberus, where there's a sort of parade and kind of girls dancing before Deep Ground drop in. So it was kind of it just gave me that vibe. But there's one point where, you know, the sort of town map comes up, and like the square, the town square is like a quarter of what you can actually explore with Kalm, which kind of makes sense. You know, obviously in the original game, Kalm is effectively one screen that you can just run into a few houses. But in Dirge of Cerberus, you know, it's a full living, breathing town that you can run about in. So kind of finding that blend looks really cool. And it's, you know, there are so many really nice touches, you know, that are just, I think for new gamers, you'll be able to go in and just think this is a really pretty place. But I think for us old timers, you know, it might. I watched Max Dude's sort of reaction to it as well, and you know, he reacted the same way that I did. You know, he just stopped and, you know, had to wipe a tear away, just being able to see this properly. You know,
I love Max.
It's so
his reactions are amazing.
Exactly, it's almost as if Max has captured the feelings of the whole community.
Everyone.
Yeah. So I think Kalm, even just from what we've seen already, Kalm has so much more to offer. It obviously showed that it's got the, you know, the side quest board. It showed
mission board. Yeah.
Chadley's hiding in the background at one point as well, so you can, you know, already we can go and get missions or material from Chadley, and you know, there's, yeah, it's just it's absolutely breathtaking. And if that's the first town, if that's, you know, the small area of the first town that we've seen, and this is the reaction that it's evoking in us, just imagine what it's going to be like when you get in, like, to Junon proper, or Cosmo Canyon, or things like that.
Cosmo Canyon's going to be a place where I'm going to sit and just sit back in my chair for a little bit and just take it all in.
Exactly.
One thing, actually, talking about Cosmo Canyon, I know it's a bit of a segue, it's off the beaten track, but there's been a little bit of talk, because obviously in the original, it seems to be permanently at nighttime. And they've talked about night cycles and things. I really do hope there is a night cycle in this game to make it even more livable, in the sense of living a reality of it. You know, I really hope that is a feature that they have. Anyway, back on to. Unless you want to touch on that.
Yeah. Well,
go on. Yeah. Go
on. I think it would be cool to see, definitely. I don't know how I would feel like. I must admit, I'm kind of drawing a blank a little bit on kind of recent games, but you know, maybe the way that Final Fantasy 14 does, that's got the cycle, or even going back to, like, you know, when we were youngsters and Ocarina of Time did it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be cool, but I personally think it's more likely that what's going to happen is they'll do the same thing that Remake did, that you'll visit the same place multiple times, but it'll be at different points of the day each time.
Yeah.
So there's a different color scheme, different conversations are taking place, etc., etc. So I would be surprised if they've limited it to that, because it might be one step too far to have all this world exploration and the time cycle going on at the same time. But who knows? Maybe it will.
Maybe.
But there was nothing from the either the Junon demo or the Grasslands demo to indicate that was happening. But I might just have missed it.
Anyway, back to, obviously we've seen Kalm, massive exploration. We've obviously seen the Chocobo farm. We've seen Chadley there. We've seen everything that's going on there. The other big, massive city, so to speak, that we've seen was Junon. Well, under Junon, in one of the demos. And we also see, so we'll talk about Junon in general, but obviously we got to see a lot of characters, and it was confirmed how we meet Yuffie this time around.
So what did you think about that? Did you like the change that they've come up with?
Yeah, so I hadn't seen the demo until we spoke earlier in the week. You sent me the link, and I didn't know that. You didn't say anything about it. I just watched it, and again, it was just a natural reaction, going, "Oh wow, this is how we meet Yuffie. That's amazing. I'm so happy that's confirmed." But yeah, obviously on arrival, I forget Rhonda, I think her name is, isn't it?
Yeah,
this new
Rhonda,
NPC, this new character. Just explain to everyone. Shinra after you. You've got bounties on your head, and then we're quickly led away by Priscilla to the beachfront. And I just thought we were going to see Mr. Dolphin getting chased around by this boss, and all of a sudden we see Yuffie in a boat, shaking from side to side. First of all, I want to know how she's ended up in the boat in the middle of the water. But yeah, I was really impressed with the integration, and I can't wait to see how that all pans out, to be honest with you.
Definitely, yeah. I kind of had it in my head that because in the original game, the first opportunity you have to recruit Yuffie is between Fort Condor and Junon. I sort of assumed that she would crop up in one of the, either or. I think the way things are panning out, we're not going to go to Fort Condor before Junon. We're potentially not in Rebirth at all. But I really liked how they introduced Yuffie. It came as a bit of a surprise, but it kind of makes sense. Both in terms of the timing of how she's recruited or how she can be recruited in the original game, but also we had the CPR minigame in the first one where Priscilla runs out, gets attacked by Bottom Swell, you have to perform CPR. Obviously we would have to be a little bit sensitive with that this time around, because there's, in terms of ratings, I think putting children in danger is one of those big no-nos. And also the potential issue of having to perform CPR on Priscilla might have presented ratings issues. So I think a good way around it is for them to introduce something similar where they might have, there might be a reference to it where they're about to perform CPR on Yuffie and she wakes up and then starts giving them hassle and whatnot. So I like that they've integrated it that way. I like that Yuffie and Priscilla already seem to know one another, which kind of makes a lot of sense, because the compilation and the original game and a little bit in intermission don't really make a secret of the fact that Yuffie is fairly well travelled. So it would make sense that Yuffie, if she's ever had to pass through Junon, would have been an under Junon, because it's a less Shinra-friendly location. In which case, as a Wutai ninja, she's likely to be able to kind of move around a little bit more freely. I think as well, one of the things that stood out for me, and I actually made a Twitter post about it a couple of nights ago, because it was one of these sort of eureka moments of just crazy speculation. But obviously, the Junon demo, it starts with the party. I don't know if it's they've come out of the Mithril mine or they've just arrived at the sort of Junon coastline, and they see the Sephiroth clones, and then the Condor swoops in, takes one of it, and flies away. Awesome. So that's absolutely breathtaking. Comes out of absolutely nowhere. And then Red 13 goes on and talks about Fort Condor. But obviously, Fort Condor was a really big thing in episode Intermission, which was the Yuffie DLC. So it kind of stands to reason that if you are going to have, particularly for players players of Remake or players of Intermission, if you're going to plant this seed of you have to start thinking about Yuffie now. One of the clever ways to do it is through Fort Condor, because there's now this association between Yuffie and Fort Condor. So the fact that the demo for that area starts with the Condor swooping down, then Red 13 talking about it, and it's now on an island, an abandoned reactor on an island. So in order to access the island, you would have to be in a boat, which of course, when you run down to the harbour, Yuffie is now in a boat.
Mm-hmm.
So there are loads of little connections that might indicate that there's a deepening connection or deepening tie between Fort Condor and Yuffie. But obviously, from what we've seen so far, it's unclear if she's just arriving in the harbour or is she about to leave, or what the deal is there. So, but I thought it was really cool that it's actually connected Yuffie and Fort Condor again, just through that, just little bits of narrative that have dropped in there.
Right. So with that, we see the new name for Bottom Swell, Terror of the Deep. We obviously fight and we save Yuffie, we save Mr. Dolphin, and then credits hit. We see this new artwork where Sephiroth is not now standing behind Cloud and Zack, but we're seeing him stand over Aerith and Tifa. Now, that's got me thinking, one, why are they showing that? Is this now a whole new... Well, I've seen it online where a lot of people are now saying, oh, maybe he's not killing Aerith, maybe he's killing Tifa. But more to the point, what do you think that insinuates as a whole? First, he's behind Cloud and Zack, and you kind of think he's maybe a little bit of a puppet master, so to speak. Now he's behind the two young ladies in the team. What's your first thoughts on that?
Well, my first thought was that it's an absolutely stunning piece of artwork, and the amount of potential sort of artistic parallels that they've thrown in just with that, the switching the characters around is crazy. And hats off to the promotional team and for the artists to be able to do this. It's ridiculous, because the tying in the artwork itself, like the Sephiroth, Zack, and Cloud piece. We're talking about a scenario like I spoke about, where the way that they've worded it is that there are two worlds. There's Cloud's world and there's Zack's world. So on one side we've got Cloud and the sort of dark green color, which ties in really nicely with Remake's color scheme, and the Nibelheim starry sky. And then we've got Sephiroth, and he's got the red behind him, the red of Rebirth, the red of Meteor, these types of things that we're associating with Sephiroth. And then on Zack's side, we've got the blue sky, which anyone who's played Crisis Core, the blue sky symbolizes freedom, this idea that Zack is constantly striving towards. So when you then kind of look at it, the Sephiroth's relationship with Cloud and Zack, well, the difference originally was that obviously Cloud has survived, Zack has not survived, and in order for my kind of theory on this one is that moving forward in the original game, in order for Sephiroth to get the black materia, he had to cause Cloud to have a mental breakdown. And the way that he caused Cloud to have a mental breakdown was to make him or force him to address his actual identity in terms of you were never in Soldier. But that was like the big twist of the game. But obviously, we're now 25 years down the line. Everyone kind of knows that twist. And more to the point, there was no real secret made of it in Crisis Core Reunion in particular. So that game only came out in December last year. So, the cat's out the bag in terms of who Cloud actually is. So that can't possibly be the twist. So in order for, the Cloud to have a mental breakdown, there has to be some other thing that Sephiroth does. And I think part of that is going to be start to integrate Zack being alive there. And this is where the artwork, where we've got the relationship between the three, really comes into play. But more importantly, we've got Cloud on the sort of dark green side. We've got Zack on the pale blue side. Cloud historically is alive and is the hero. Zack historically is dead. And if you then put Tifa and Aerith in there as well, Tifa is associated with this dark green sky, this sort of Nibelheim starry sky. Aerith is, associated with the pale blue sky we saw from the remake artwork. It kind of was like the original Aerith and Highwind artwork, except it's just her in the grasslands with the pale blue sky. Throughout Crisis Core and in remake as well, she talks about her fear of the blue sky. We also know that historically Tifa lives, Aerith dies, which then parallels those two sides as well. But I think one of the ways that Sephiroth is going to start to unravel Cloud's mind, the way that he did in the original game and the way that has already been hinted at in the trailers, is that he's going to start to cast doubt over who Tifa is. He's going to start to cast doubt over Tifa's identity and whether or not Tifa survived the Nibelheim incident and all this sort of stuff. So from that perspective, you can actually see that Tifa is now starting to replace Cloud in that storyline. The same way that Aerith, Aerith and Zack were killed before they might both be alive in Zack's timeline now. There's all these parallels that are going on, which is why I think the artwork itself is so clever, so powerful. So yeah, I think what it's actually doing is hinting at the direction that we're headed in Rebirth.
Did you notice all the way through that segment we're both smiling because we actually cannot wait to see how this all pans out?
Yeah.
Before we touch on the thoughts on the end game, where it's going to end and stuff, and why, is there anything else you notice from, obviously, you're an author, you write these incredible books, which I own, and I am so glad that I own.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And is there anything else from that perspective, from a mythical perspective, that you've noticed or you want to talk about before we talk about Endgame?
I kind of figured, obviously I've spent the last few years talking about the mythology side of things and writing books about it, and part of that has really been delving into the background and the sort of writing mentality of Kazushige Nijima, who's the lead scenario writer on the remake project. So I figured that because there are a few little nuggets of mythology that are sort of stuck into remake, that this would kind of be expanded on again with Rebirth. And we haven't even made it past the state of play trailer. We haven't even made it past the Nibelheim demo, and already there are things in there that are just, I feel like, have been vindicated. Particularly with some of the things that I spoke about in my Norse mythology book. Like, for anyone that's not familiar with it, Midgar and Nibelheim are named after two of the 9 worlds in the Norse cosmology, which is Midgard, which is the world of men, the central world, and Niflheim, which is sort of the world of ice and mist, or the world of icy fog. And in some translations, you could call it the home of Cloud. But the idea with these is, when you start to sort of peel back the layers, there's actually quite a lot of mythological references to Viking lore going on in these two locations in particular. And the Vikings believed that the 9 worlds were connected by the cosmic tree called Yggdrasil. So if you've ever watched any of the Thor films, you'll know what Yggdrasil is. It's mentioned quite a few times. But if you manage to catch any of the demos from the Nibelheim area, it's very clear that the armor that Cloud is wearing is the Yggdrasil armlet. So straight away, they're not messing about. This is Nibelheim is based on Norse lore. You know, we're right in the first part of the game, the tutorial section. Cloud's wearing the Yggdrasil armlet, and it's like, and even the description of the armlet itself. You know, that way when you can open up the menus and you can see little descriptions. So it actually makes reference to Yggdrasil, the world tree, and it's believed that the armlet is carved from wood from the world tree, and it's just they're not even being subtle about it. So it blew me away. And there's other little things as well, like Odin has been a recurring summon in the series since Final Fantasy III. And in almost every single entry, his horse Sleipnir has 6 legs, which is not totally unheard of in Norse lore, but it's far more common that Sleipnir has 8 legs. And if you watch the State of Play trailer again with Odin in it, you can see that his horse actually has 8 legs, which is amazing enough in itself. But what's even better is that when Odin kind of rides forth to attack an enemy, if you pause the footage, you'll see that the enemy he's attacking is the Midgard Zolom. Why is that important? Well, the Midgard Zolom is actually a mistranslation in English. It should have been Midgard Sorn. Midgard Sorn is the world serpent from Norse mythology. You kind of encircled the world. And we're now in a situation where that one little piece of footage with Odin, they've increased the number of legs on his horse to meet Norse mythology, and is attacking the giant serpent from Norse mythology just in a few seconds worth of footage, and it's everything I could have wanted from a lore enthusiast and a mythology enthusiast.
So. I can see a third book already. Well, obviously, I can see the next book, should I say? Because and I see obviously your Twitter feed. It's just full of all these little intricate bits of detail. I can see you're going to be inundated with plenty of content for months to come.
So if this is what's in the demo, if this is what's in the trailers, I'm just salivating at the idea of what else I can find in this game. So I'm really excited about it, because none of this is by accident. You know, they've actually put thought into this, and people like myself really appreciate it. And me particularly, who likes to go on and, you know, social media to go into and write it in books and just explain why is this here, why is this important. So yeah, I'm mega excited about this stuff. And just if you're okay, just as a little plug, I'm obviously talking about Norse mythology just now. I've just released my newest book, which is Greek mythology that inspired Final Fantasy VII, which, you know, covers the entire compilation, including remake. I've actually just came prepared.
Yeah, we did.
Have you got one as well?
I've got him.
You've got it handy.
Yeah, right next to me in one of these drawers. This isn't planned, as you can tell.
So they're totally legit. Wasn't planned, but
there we go.
Amazing. Thank you.
Just so you know, just so the people watching it don't think I'm making it up. But that kind of leads us, because obviously we want to plug obviously your bits and stuff. But we started speaking probably the best part, like we've known each other for a while through Twitter and stuff. But we got a bit, obviously, you know, exchange numbers. We've been working on a project your end for all this as well. So over the last 8 months, we've actually got quite familiar. We've learned that we both like football. Our football clubs have got certain songs that are tying us together. But exactly. So if you want to, I'll give you, as I say, give yourself a little plug and talk about maybe the project we worked on before we go into the end game. But the thoughts on the end game, that'll be great.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, thank you so much for your helping on that. So for anyone that's not familiar with what we're talking about, we now have a new website for myself and for my written projects. So those are the books, and also just sort of web articles that I do as well, just sort of delving into some of the other Final Fantasy titles and other bits and pieces. So that's www.mjgallagherbooks. Sorry, not boots. That's mjgallagherbooks.com. where you can just sort of follow what I'm doing, the content that I'm putting out. It's got links to the books themselves.
I'll put all the links in the description as well, so they'll all be there for you.
Easy peasy. They're on Amazon and so on and so forth. But you know, we're kind of slowly putting that together. At the moment, you know, be more content as time goes on. I've got all these wild, wonderful plans for the mythology and Final Fantasy content that I'm producing. And I'm so grateful to yourself, Roy, for helping me on that.
It was a nice little project. Obviously, just in case you know, I built the website for Mo, and we obviously talked about what he wanted on it, and it was a great project to work on. So yeah, I'm more than happy to have to still, even if you need help you with that. But yeah, so moving on, thoughts on the end game, thoughts where we're gonna see Rebirth end. Take it away, because I think we both agree on this.
Well, do you know what? Up until very recently, I had it in my head that it was going to be the Northern Crater that would end, that would be the cliffhanger, Meteor would be summoned, weapon would be activated, you know, perfect place. And I think one of the things that, you know, in the original game, when Aerith dies, having that literal hole in your party is really quite impactful. That you then have to play the remainder of the game without Aerith, but in particular the next section of the game where Cloud's mental health just, you know, goes off the edge of a cliff. So I thought it would be a good, if Aerith was going to die, or if another character was going to die, it would be a good place to have it the Northern Crater, because all the big twists, everything comes together at that point. And also you get to experience the impact of not having them in your party for a little while. The way that things are actually looking now from developer comments is that the game is going to end at the Forgotten Capital. So it's not clear if they are you know, they've talked about shifting some of the narrative around. So it's unclear if, you know, they're going to go to the Northern Crater first and then go to the Forgotten Capital, or, you know, if events in the Forgotten Capital are going to happen in Zack's timeline, but not Cloud's. You know, they've already suggested that Weapon is on the move already, which kind of makes sense given everything that happened in the Singularity. You know, you would have to expect that the planet has gone into panic mode and has activated a weapon as a result of that. So it's kind of looking as if it's going to be a cliffhanger at the Forgotten Capital, and I'm interested to see what they changed, you know, in terms of getting there. I'm happy to speculate on who I think's going to go.
Oh, go on then.
Do you want to go first, or will I?
Where I think it'll end, or
yeah,
what?
Yeah. Well, okay. You talk about where you think it'll end.
So yeah, I think
how you think it'll end.
Right. So I've had a wild theory about how it, like, the area. So let's, like, you might not think Aerith will die, but let's just say Aerith dies, and that's it. That's, you know, she doesn't get saved because a lot of people talk about she won't die. People talk about other people dying. Let's just say, on the pretense that Aerith is the one that dies, I actually made a video, never done very well, to be honest with you, because obviously there was I don't think I had many subscribers, but I had a feeling that Cloud may be the one that does it. That was my twist on it. My twist on it was that a lot of people was like, I don't see it. Mine was more because obviously in the original we got the impression that Sephiroth didn't know killing Aerith was his downfall, so to speak, because as soon as he killed Aerith, that was when everything started going against him, so to speak, from a certain aspect. So in this one, especially with what happened at the end of Remake, it seemed like he had more of a clue what was going on. And I just feel from his perspective, when he gets to that point, he knows killing Aerith will be his downfall, but Cloud will also know that. And I think Cloud and Aerith, in my head, I had a feeling that Cloud would look at Aerith. Aerith would know, I'm here because I need to die here.
Yeah.
And there's just a split second where Cloud shocks the whole party, the whole community, and he's the one who actually kills Aerith. That was how I thought it would go down. A lot of people may think that's silly. It doesn't happen, but I don't know.
No, I don't think it's silly. I think from a narrative perspective, it's shocking.
And that's what we need. That's what we need. We need the
Yeah.
shock, and I'm sure what you're going to tell us in a minute is going to have that same wow factor.
Yeah. Actually, it works. It works very well with what my take on it is. And my take is that I agree that Aerith is going to die. And the reason I think Aerith is going to die is that, again, having researched Najima and Najima's writing style, that he doesn't tend to deviate too much from certain philosophies in terms of Norse worldview, in terms of classical mythology worldview, in terms of some Judeo-Christian philosophies as well. And one of the big things in Greek mythology is that you can't escape fate ever. It's not even the gods can escape fate. In Viking, not quite Viking mythology, in sort of Viking culture, they believed in fate, and they believed that how you arrived at your fate could be changed. And they even had practices, like magical practices, to find out what was going to happen in their life so they could make changes to that. But the idea was, like, if you are fated to die on the battlefield, you might be able to change which battle, you might be able to change where that location is, you might be able to change who it is that kills you, but you will still die on the battlefield at some point. So it's that idea that you can change the circumstances, but your fate remains the same.
Okay, so that ties into what I think then, doesn't it, really?
So that's where I'm going with this one, that I for that reason I think Najima is going to keep in that both Aerith and Zack will die by the end of the game, but the circumstances are likely to change. And I think what they'll probably, or my take on what they'll do, is that they'll lead the player to believe that Aerith can be saved right up until the point where she is not saved.
In what sense? How will they make us think that Aerith is going to be saved?
There can be, just because the whole idea that previously we've had this, or certainly in Remake, Aerith had memories of the future, so she knew about certain things in advance. And we've already seen, at the church in Remake, there's flashes where Cloud gets to see, the white materia dropping into the water, or dropping from the water altar and things. So you would have to assume that Aerith has also seen this. Aerith is likely to know through, in the original game, she learns at the Temple of the Ancient, a lot of secrets about the Ancients. She learns when she travels to the Forgotten Capital what she has to do in order to activate Holy. So I anticipate that what's going to happen is that they will know that Aerith is probably going to die there. It's very possible that they are trying to find a way to stop that. It's also possible that, this is where the two timelines are converging, that the party in Cloud's timeline are chasing Aerith to stop her, whereas in Zack's timeline, he's making his way to the Forgotten Capital to also try and prevent things from playing out that way. So I think they'll give the impression that through the character choices, or through the fact that they might know in advance that that's what Sephiroth's planning, that this can be stopped or this can be changed. And then at the last moment, something will happen where it's not changed, which then also ties into your theory of, if it's also if it's the idea that Sephiroth knows that Aerith activating the white materia is what stopped him in the first place, maybe he's actively trying to keep Aerith alive, but in order to save the planet, she has to die, which then ties into your idea. But
okay, so with everything you told me about the timelines and about Cloud and Zack still kind of on their own path,
yeah,
would it be So with you saying they're going to try and lead us to believe she can be saved, just something that maybe like I've thought about there. Could it be at all possible we think Zack is behind them? So you were saying before about Zack still in his own. What happened? This has just come. So what? So if they all get to the Forgotten Capital, Zack's kind of following them, and we think it's one timeline, and he's following them to catch them up. And then that scene where Sephiroth's coming down with the sword, a Buster Sword gets put in the way of Sephiroth's sword, blocks it. The camera pans out. It's Zack, and we think Zack saved Aerith. Oh my God, Aerith's alive. And then at that point, we realized, shit, it wasn't one timeline, it's two still. And it flashes to her actually dying. But then obviously in Zack's timeline, they're nice and happy. They go off into the sunset. But ideally, as you say, it's still the live stream. It's still the afterlife. But maybe that's how they do the twist. I just thought of it the way you were explaining it then. Maybe it's something like that. And we only find out at that point that it was the live stream all along that he was in.
Exactly. And just for a bit of clarity, I like that idea that that sounds pretty cool from a visual perspective and a narrative perspective. Mm-hmm. Just when I was talking about Zack catching up, the direction I think they're headed in, perhaps not for Rebirth, perhaps actually for Part 3, is that the two timelines will converge, because my actual theory is that in one of the timelines, Meteor will hit the planet and actually create such a rift in space and time that's where the thing in the skies come from. So because there's now this rift between the two worlds, and they have actually talked about the worlds are sort of merging, like kind of like Gaia and Terra in Final Fantasy IX. It could very well be that this is something that is going to change the course of the planet so dramatically is Aerith's death, because she has the power to activate Holy. Maybe an event like that is where the crossover takes place. So when I'm talking about Zack is sort of moving towards them to try and catch them up, it's because, theoretically there might be a crossover there, but we're now getting into mental speculation, quantum physics stuff. So, but just to kind of rein it in a little bit, I think Rebirth will end with Aerith dying.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's a good place to finish this. I suppose it's a podcast, the length we've been going on. I'm going to have to address it as on YouTube. But it's been great chat, and obviously we've been talking for a while about doing something, and one thing led to another with us being busy. We just haven't. So it's great to finally get on pod with you and have a good old chat about it. And I hope obviously we can do it again in the near future. As we said before, all Mo's links will be in the description. All the social media, his website, his links to his books, everything will be down there below. I'm sure all my subscribers who follow me for Final Fantasy know who Mo is, but if you didn't, you do now. Make sure you get onto his website and get yourself a book, because they're fascinating. If you've enjoyed what he said now, that's just a snippet of what is in his book. But yeah, Mo, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed myself, Roy.
I have as well. I've been smiling ear to ear for the whole hour and a half. But yeah, good. Hopefully we can do this soon. Subscribe to the channel for more Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth content. And yeah, that's the video.